I'm pleased to welcome here today Elsa Hyland and Azzi Agnelli. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me about your debate today and what you would like to share with the investment public of the FII.
Absolutely. So we are together in a panel, All Europe Young Voices, and we are invited to discuss how our generation can actually take place into this discussion about our future, basically.
We have heard a lot about, Europe is ready, come and invest, excitement about Europe. How does it feel on the ground? You're a young European entrepreneur.
I think it feels like it's the coming of a revolution. It feels like it's just before going into battle almost. I think there's a real need and a real want among our generation for change, and I think it's about how do we make that happen and how do we execute it? How do we get out from being in the rooms of just talking, and how do we actually think about like incentivizing the next generation of people?
Obviously, here we have a situation where we're speaking to an investor and to an entrepreneur. So it's interesting to see from both sides. How do you feel about it, Elsa?
I know, but I think that we have been, especially then in the tech ecosystem, we have been very much in the forefront. Obviously, we are 30 years lag from US, Silicon Valley, but in the 90s and 2000, early 2000, at least Stockholm, where I'm from, was one of the first countries to kind of democratize internet access. So I think the year of 2000, there was actually 51% of all households having internet and 61 having their own computers, 61%. And that led to that democratization of internet access and high-speed internet access, even in rural areas, led to we use speed in order to innovate. And out of that came companies such as MySQL that was sold and made a big exit. Skype, that was later sold to 2003 and was founded, sold to eBay and then Microsoft. Trade Doubler that led to an investment into Spotify. So that ecosystem has built on speed and also reinvestment of time, allocation, resources, money into the ecosystem, and has led us to be on the forefront of innovation, at least in Europe. But we have kind of been leaning back on what has happened 25 years ago, 30 years ago almost, and being, I would say in Europe, maybe reactive instead of proactive to what is coming next. And I think that is where we are today, standing, and not until we're head-to-head to this very geopolitical hard times, we're acting. And I think that in the future we gotta be proactive instead of reactive.
Azzi, what has been the most challenging thing for you when building your business?
So I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I'm more in the camp of dealing with how to think about investing family legacy money. And so I've been, my father passed away when I was 3 months old, so I've been managing his estate since I was 18. And so I've been at the kind of cusp end of thinking about how family legacy should be defined and thinking about a next gen with that mindset. And the way in which I think family wealth should be used and conditioned is more around compounding wealth, but also being really strategic around impact. And I think it should be kind of a mandate of people and family legacies to also think about being dynamic with their impact. So I have, within my own family office structure, I have created a subsection which has an impact fund which invests in the mental health sector, and a non-profit which also invests in the mental health sector. Because to me, my belief is that everything starts with the mind. The interpersonal relationship with people then has a ripple effect on the interpersonal relationship with the planet, with geopolitics. And for me, it's always been the lowest hanging fruit of how to get systemic change across the line is dealing with people's general happiness.
So what you're saying is investment, but with investment with impact.
With impact, yeah. Which is obviously why we're all here. And I think that is really, that's really the manifesto which needs to just continue to be emulated globally and on a geopolitical level, is how can everything be done with integrity, with intention, and with a holistic opinion at play constantly.
How important is this to you when you're looking at projects?
Absolutely, it's a core. I invest a lot into health tech and then into other impact businesses. Obviously, early stage, I look very much at the founder and who it is rather, but impact is absolutely a big part. Issue here is to keep these businesses and these talents in Europe and not let it go to either east or west. And I think that is a really important question for us to think about.
Yeah, and to your point, I think the white space now is around how do we incentivize Europe to be dependent on ourselves and not necessarily have such a reliance on the other global superpowers, whether I don't necessarily need to name them, but I think as someone who has a background in psychology, I've thought about continents as people. And Europe as a person, we would be the coolest, the most interesting, the most elegant, but we're right now having a bit of a burnout post 2 mental breakdowns in the past 100 years. And now it's time, we've had our moment to sulk and be grumpy, and now it's time to think about the integration that we've learned and go forward and re-incentivize what's to come and be the global superpowers that we are.
But then there is also one thing that many forget when discussing Europe, and with the family heritage of the Agnellis, I have to ask you, there is a cultural capital as well, something that's maybe not tangible, but Europe has been very strong with that historically, hasn't it?
100%. And I think that it's something that is fundamental to Europe, which is that you can have all the capital in the world, but if you don't distribute it with elegance and class and integrity, then there's no point. And I think, my family history has always been around kind of like unionizing Italy. And now I think as someone who's at the next generation of that family, that's really something that's close to my heart, is really thinking about like how can I leverage my family estate to really give back to the wider population, and really think about like how can you be dynamic with both, compounding alpha, but also thinking about like what's the point in having money if you're not helping karmically the rest of your community. Like we're at this frontier point in the world where, as someone who's 27, I look and I'm newly engaged, super happy, but I'm like, ugh, yeah, I want to have kids, but like I can't with confidence know that my kids are going to have, the same education and same quality of life that I had, living in political unrest, uncertainty of war. It's intense, and I think it's really important to honor the anxiety, the real ripple anxiety that is felt within our generation, and there's so much to be said about that.
Do you almost feel that Europe has a bigger maturity in understanding these problems because they have already gone through different paths?
Definitely, and I also think that there's an undertone of annoyance from maybe I'm speaking. I spoke to my sister who's 18, and I asked her, I was like, because I told her that I was going to be here, and I was like, okay, what is the takeaway that I should say? And she was like, honestly, as a 18, 19-year-old, we're annoyed at the state of affairs. We feel let down, and we feel let down. So there's this kind of like, we're in this like weird interim period of like being pissed off. But now it's like, okay, enough of being pissed off. Let's take accountability. Let's work collectively. And also to that point, it's really important that the youth take accountability for the fact that like, if you guys want to get something done, you got to show up, you got to vote, you've got to be you can't be lazy, and we have to take accountability for that as well.
When you're speaking to young entrepreneurs, especially in tech, is there still this notion, if I want to make it, I have to go abroad, I have to go to Silicon Valley, or is that changing?
No, it's absolutely true. And unfortunately, when we look at the reports that are being made around the European state of tech, especially by Atomico, last year, 47%, and that is both founders, investors, and other talents that answered the survey, says the attractiveness of staying in Europe is going down. And that is a lot due to bureaucracy and policy making. And unfortunately, that is a reality that we're living in. And it's so important to Macron's speech today, and President Macron's speech today. I 100% agree with what he's saying. But no one is really bringing up the how. How are we going to do this? How are we going to unify? Because obviously the ideal scenario would be a 28 state that doesn't have any bureaucracy, or where we are a unified union. But to build that, we would, to deregulate, we would have to regulate. And that is like, okay, is that just a vicious circle that we're building onto? So I think we got to talk more about the how. It's easy to identify the problems, but what can we do instead?
As Europe obviously has a deep heritage of talent, of education, of Prime Minister Edi Rama said, of it has the soul, it's the soul of the world, and obviously of incredible success stories with industrialists such as your family. What, in your opinion, will be the European success of the future?
I think I would like to hope that we could be the ones pioneering the climate change revolution. I think that we could also be the ones that talk most proactively and holistically around the state of affairs in terms of mental health. And so I think that is health, AI, and innovation.
Thank you very much to you both.